4. Popular exercises you should never do after 60. Many people, when they reach 60 years old, start having problems they didn't have before. Lower back pain or knee pain, difficulty getting up from the couch and climbing stairs, among other very common issues. The main problem is directly associating these problems with advancing age. That thing of, "I'm getting old, that's just how it is," as if it were something normal to happen. And the fact is that it shouldn't be like this. These problems are caused by two main conditions. The first is sedentarism, and the second is doing the wrong type of exercise. At this stage of life, you should have enough experience to know that it's not about doing more, but about doing the right thing. That works appropriately. That's why, today you'll see 4 popular exercises you shouldn't do after 60 and 4 more suitable substitutes to strengthen muscles while preserving joints. Before we begin, please tell us through the comments your name and the city from where you're watching our content. We'd love to know. Exercise number 1, deep squat. The deep squat, where you lower yourself until your thighs are parallel to the floor or even lower, is celebrated as the king of leg exercises and works practically all the lower body muscles. However, after 60 years old, it can become a true villain for the joints. With natural aging, the knees begin to show cartilage wear, reduction of synovial fluid that lubricates the joints, and, in many cases, some degree of osteoarthritis. When performing a deep squat, the pressure on the knee joints increases exponentially, potentially reaching up to 7 times body weight at the lowest position of the movement. The natural flexibility of the hips tends to decrease with age, which means that to compensate for this limitation, many people end up curving the lower back region during the movement. This compensation transfers tension to the lower back region, an area already vulnerable after decades of use, and that back pain that appeared out of nowhere might not have been so random after all. Another common problem is stability. With the natural decrease in muscle mass after 60 years old, body balance becomes compromised, and the deep squat requires considerable coordination and stability. The main mistakes I observe are forcing range beyond joint capacity, allowing the knees to excessively pass the line of the feet and not adequately activating the core during the movement, which increases lower back stress. This exercise is contraindicated for people with a history of knee injuries, advanced osteoarthritis, chronic lower back problems, or uncontrolled hypertension. Number 2. Traditional abdominal. The traditional abdominal, where you lie on your back, bend your knees and lift your torso toward your legs, is frequently recommended to strengthen the upper part of the abdominals. However, what many people don't realize is that, during a traditional abdominal, there's enormous pressure on the spine, especially in the lower back region. After 60 years of age, it's common for intervertebral discs to already show some degree of dehydration and natural wear, making them more susceptible to injuries. Each repetition of a traditional abdominal can significantly increase disc compression, potentializing problems like hernias and protrusions. Another critical problem is excessive activation of the iliopsoas muscle, one of the main hip flexors. This muscle originates in the lower back spine and inserts into the femur, and when contracted vigorously during abdominals, can exert anterior traction on the spine, increasing lower back lordosis. For people who already have back pain or postural imbalances, this can significantly aggravate these problems. There's also the issue of intra-abdominal pressure. During a traditional abdominal, there's a considerable increase in pressure inside the abdominal cavity. The most frequent mistakes include pulling the neck with the hands during the movement, using momentum instead of controlled contraction, and not keeping the lower back region pressed against the floor. This exercise should be avoided by people with disc hernias, protrusions, history of lower back surgeries, incontinence problems, or pelvic floor dysfunctions. Number 3. Traditional push-up. The traditional push-up performed with body extended and supported only on hands and toes is undeniably an efficient exercise for upper body development. However, for people over 60 years old, this variation can present a series of risks. First, The traditional push-up position places significant load on the wrists, and with aging, it's common to develop conditions like arthritis in the hand and wrist joints, making this position potentially painful. The stabilization strength necessary to maintain the body in a straight line during the exercise is considerable. With the natural decrease in muscle mass and core strength that occurs with age, many people end up compensating with the lower back region, which can result in back pain and even more serious injuries. Another critical point is the pressure exerted on the shoulders. The shoulder joint is complex, and after decades of use, can show wear in the rotator cuff, the set of muscles and tendons that stabilize this joint. The traditional push-up, especially when performed with inadequate technique, like letting the elbows open too much, can aggravate pre-existing problems or trigger new inflammations. The total load of body weight distributed only between hands and feet creates excessive tension that already worn joints may not adequately support. The difficulty of maintaining adequate form throughout the entire movement increases injury risk, as muscle fatigue can lead to sudden posture collapse. The most common mistakes are allowing the hips to drop, creating lower back hyperextension, excessively opening the elbows, increasing stress on the shoulders, and not adequately distributing weight between hands and feet. This exercise is contraindicated for people with arthritis in the wrists or shoulders, rotator cuff injuries, core instability, or chronic lower back pain. Number 4. High-impact running. Many see running as the best cardiovascular exercise, almost like a symbol of youth and vitality, and there's no doubt it brings numerous benefits to the cardiovascular system. However, for those who cross the threshold of 60 years old, it's not always the wonder it appears to be. What many don't realize is the cumulative impact that decades of physical activity cause on the musculoskeletal system. Each time the foot touches the ground during running, the body absorbs impact force that can reach 2 to 3 times body weight. This force starts in the feet and ankles, propagating through the knees, hips, and spine. Over time, this repetitive impact can lead to a series of problems, especially when tissues no longer have the same recovery capacity as before. Among the most common problems are shin splints, which is pain in the front of the leg, patellar tendinitis, Achilles tendon strain, inflammation in the plantar fascia, and even stress fractures in the bones of the feet or legs. Bone density naturally decreases with age, making bones more susceptible to fractures, a risk that simply isn't worth taking. There's also the balance issue. Running requires coordination and stability, and with the natural decrease in muscle mass and changes in the vestibular system, the risk of falls increases considerably. A fall at 30 years old can mean a scraped knee, but at 60 it can result in severe fractures, especially of the hip, which unfortunately are associated with high complication rates. There's still an important psychological factor. Many adults feel internal pressure to continue running as they associate this activity with maintaining youth and cardiovascular health, ending up ignoring signs of pain and discomfort, thinking about the old saying, "No pain, no gain." This mentality, although admirable in certain contexts, can be dangerous when it leads to ignoring clear signs that the body is sending. The main mistakes include increasing distance or intensity too quickly, using inadequate or worn footwear, and ignoring persistent pain. This exercise should be avoided or modified by people with advanced osteoporosis, fracture history, severe arthritis in the knees or hips, or significant balance problems. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Having constant access to science-based information is what will make you progress with health in the long term in the world of weight training. Now that you already know the 4 exercises you should avoid, let's go to the safe and efficient substitutes. Exercise number 1, chair squat. The chair squat is a brilliant alternative that preserves practically all the benefits of the traditional squat, eliminating the risks. In this exercise, you position a stable chair behind you and perform a sitting and standing movement without necessarily completely touching the chair. The presence of the chair serves as a natural range limiter and at the same time a safety net that drastically increases your confidence during the movement. To execute correctly, Position the chair against a wall to prevent it from sliding. Stand in front of it with feet shoulder-width apart and slightly turned outward. Keep chest raised, activate the core, and initiate the movement by pushing hips backward as if you were going to sit. Lower yourself until comfortable, ideally until almost touching the chair, and then return to the initial position, focusing on pushing through the heels. The chair eliminates the need to lower beyond the point where knees form a 90-degree angle, precisely where joint pressure skyrockets. Additionally, the presence of the chair provides a visual and tactile reference that significantly improves your technique. Unlike the deep squat, this movement doesn't cause extreme pressure peaks in the knees, allows maintaining spine in neutral position more easily, and offers psychological support that reduces fear of falls. A common mistake I see is when people let knees collapse inward during the movement, so always keep knees aligned with toes. Another mistake is accelerating the movement too much, losing control. Execute in a controlled manner, taking about 2 seconds to descend and 2 to ascend. To start, I recommend 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions with 60 to 90 seconds of rest between them. As you gain strength and confidence, you can progress to 4 sets or increase to 15 repetitions. The beauty of this exercise is that it's extremely functional. After all, sitting and standing is a movement we perform dozens of times a day, and by strengthening it, you're directly improving quality of life and independence. This exercise is safe for practically everyone, but should be modified for people with severe hip mobility limitations. Number 2. Seated march. The seated march is a brilliant exercise that effectively works abdominal muscles, especially the transverse abdominis, without overloading the lower back spine or hip flexors. It's a movement that mimics the action of walking, but performed in a seated position, eliminating impact on joints and drastically reducing stress on the lower back region. To perform correctly, sit on the edge of a firm chair with spine erect and feet supported on the floor. Engage your core as if you were pulling your belly button toward your spine. Maintaining this abdominal contraction, lift one knee toward your chest, then lower it and repeat with the other knee, alternating in a movement that resembles marching. The movement should be controlled and relatively slow. It's not a race. To increase intensity, you can slightly lift feet off the floor when they're not in movement, or hold the position with knee elevated for 1 to 2 seconds before alternating. An even more challenging variation is to partially extend the leg when lifting the knee, creating a larger lever arm. This exercise works not only abdominal muscles, but also promotes coordination between breathing and movement, a fundamental skill that tends to decrease with age. Unlike the traditional abdominal, the seated march doesn't compress intervertebral discs, doesn't create excessive intra-abdominal pressure, and doesn't excessively activate hip flexors in a harmful way. Additionally, being performed seated, it completely eliminates fall risk and reduces to zero pressure on joints like knees and hips. A common mistake is letting the spine curve during the exercise, so keep chest raised and spine in neutral position throughout the entire movement. Another frequent mistake is using momentum instead of abdominal strength. The movement should be controlled, not ballistic. Also observe not to hold your breath. Maintain constant and rhythmic breathing. I recommend starting with 3 sets of 10 to 15 repetitions for each side, with intervals of 60 seconds between sets. As strength increases, you can progress by increasing the number of repetitions to 20, adding a 4th set, or incorporating the more challenging variations mentioned above. This exercise is appropriate for practically everyone, but people with hip pain should start with smaller range and progress gradually. Number 3. Incline push-up. The incline push-up is a modified version of the traditional push-up that significantly reduces the degree of difficulty and stress on joints without compromising muscle benefits. In this variation, instead of supporting hands on the floor, you support them on an elevated surface like a wall, counter, table, or sturdy couch back. To execute correctly, position yourself facing the chosen surface. Place hands on it at shoulder width or slightly wider. take a step back with feet until body forms a diagonal line with the floor. The closer to horizontal your body is, the greater the challenge. So start with a more vertical incline and progress gradually to lower surfaces as strength increases. Keep core engaged, back straight and lower yourself by bending elbows until chest approaches the surface. Then push back to initial position, focusing on using chest muscles, triceps, and shoulders. This variation works exactly the same muscle groups as the traditional push-up, including pectorals, triceps, anterior deltoid, and core, but with two great advantages. First, the load on joints is significantly lower, especially on wrists and shoulders. Second, you can easily adjust difficulty level by altering surface height. Unlike the traditional push-up, this movement distributes weight more favorably, reduces pressure on wrists because the angle is less extreme and allows greater control over exercise intensity. A common mistake is when people let elbows open too much during the movement, so keep elbows at approximately 45 degrees, angle relative to the body, neither tight to the torso nor completely open. Another frequent mistake is not maintaining body alignment, letting the hip drop or rise excessively. Your body should form a straight line from feet to head during the entire movement. For beginners, I recommend 3 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions 3 times per week with intervals of 60 to 90 seconds between sets. This exercise is safe for most people, but those with severe shoulder injuries should consult a professional before starting. Number 4. Stationary bike and moderate walking. The first alternative to running is the stationary bike. Unlike running, cycling is a low-impact exercise that practically eliminates repetitive trauma on joints. When you pedal, your weight is supported by the bike saddle, drastically reducing the load on knees, hips, and spine, precisely the areas that tend to present more problems with advancing age. The only mistake you should avoid on the bike is adjusting resistance too high from the start, which can overload the knee joints, exactly what we're trying to avoid. The bike works mainly the quadriceps, hamstrings, glutes, and calves, practically the same muscle groups as running. However, it does this in a smoother and more controlled way. The second option is moderate walking. Walking regularly strengthens the heart, improves blood circulation, helps control weight and blood glucose levels, and strengthens bones, crucial for preventing osteoporosis. Unlike running, walking always keeps one foot in contact with the ground, drastically reducing impact forces. The calves, known as the second heart of the body, work actively during walking, pumping blood back to the heart against gravity, improving general circulation. Start with walks of 15 to 20 minutes on flat terrain, and, as you feel comfortable, gradually increase duration and add routes with slight inclines. Ideally, accumulate at least 150 minutes of walking per week, as recommended by the World Health Organization. Common mistakes in walking include using inadequate footwear without appropriate support, starting with routes that are too long or steep, causing overload and ignoring pain signs. Both exercises are safe for practically everyone, but people with heart problems should consult a doctor before starting any exercise program. If you enjoyed this and want to also discover the effects that creatine has on your body after 50, we left a video appearing right now on the screen showing each one of them better. Don't miss it because only 1% of people over 50 know about this. Thank you for watching until here, and may God bless you, my friend.